the leader of the Social Democratic Party here in the UK. William, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Very well, thanks. A little bleary-eyed after a long night, election night, but yeah, all good.
Yeah, that seems to be the way, despite the fact that people say that, they've no interest in politics, and despite the fact that people say, it's all of this and it's that or the other, people do still weigh in to see the way things that have went. And I think there's a lot of red eyes. Me in particular, have been up most of the night with the Northern Ireland election results, and of course the results that are coming in from Scotland and coming in from England as well. It's been a monumental 24 hours.
Yeah, and when you're a candidate, obviously you've sort of got to be there and tune into it. But the SDP had 122 candidates throughout the country, so I was getting pinged all the time with new results and information. So it was a good night.
Tell me this. I haven't spoken to anybody on the show before from the SDP. I've had candidates on from other parties, so I'm happy to speak with you this morning. I'm looking through some of your feedback of the results that came in. You guys have done well. You've had good showings in very, very many areas. The word that I'm looking at here is foundations. Would you say it's safe to say that at the minute, you guys are laying what you hope would be a bedrock foundation and to grow upon quite substantially over the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the party's origins go back to 1981. It's a long time ago. It was a very big party in the 80s, for those old enough to remember that. But then it was kicked back to the grassroots, and since sort of 2017, 2018, 19, we've been rebuilding it. And yeah, I mean, it's literally from scratch almost. The membership got very low, but we contested 6 seats in 2017 and then 20 in 2019, 122 now. We've just seen a tenfold increase in our vote, more than that actually, and 5 of us got over 1,000 votes, and that's pretty much what you'd expect for an insurgent party. So we're delighted to start to keep deposits and get good results.
So for the benefit of anybody listening in here this morning, and you're painting a picture of the history of the party, a brief history of the party, and obviously post-election results, someone might be listening and say, well, why should I give you any consideration? What makes you any different than Farage's Reform Party or Sunak's Labour Party for that matter? I have looked on your website, by the way, that you can check out sdp.org.uk. You can see the SDP's manifesto in there, but if somebody was to accost you in the street and say, William, why should I give you a vote? What makes you any different than any of that other show that are running for election?
Well, we're the only party that leans left on economics and right on culture. So that's the sort of dream ticket for us. And it's where about half the public are. So let's say we take the economics. We're skeptical about ultra-free trade policy that's gutted the factories. I think manufacturing matters. So we'd want to build that up. Some trade protectionism would be a good idea. We are not in favour of selling our utilities off to foreign banks and foreign states. I think that's unpatriotic. I think you want those in public ownership, railways too. And on the cultural side, we believe that family is the foundation of society. We're quite culturally traditionalist, you might say old-fashioned. But again, it's where most British people are. And so I think people are crying out for a party like us. You can't get our blend of politics with any other party, and when they find out about us, they tend to vote for us.
So yeah, interesting. People are. It's not. I would say. When you say you described yourself as old-fashioned, there. Somebody would say, "Oh, you're old-fashioned." That could be used as an insult, but progressively, I believe to be labelled old-fashioned is becoming more of a badge of honour, because it's patently obvious that, the further society moves away from certain core values and certain establishments, it's obvious that it disintegrates and turns to mush. So to be labelled old-fashioned these days, I think, is a positive thing. It's not a negative thing.
Yeah, I mean, Rick, I'll give you a couple of basic examples, which should sound a bit trite. But so, we know what a woman is, right? As most people in the population do, so we don't have trouble defining a woman. And we're quite willing to protect sex-based rights in spaces and sport and the other things. It's basics to us. It's not a problem at all. And another sort of slightly old-fashioned thing is the idea that, a state might have a border, and it might want to protect its border, and it might not want people just to wander in unvetted and unchecked. That's, I'm joking now, but of course that's quite an old-fashioned view. I mean, every politician thought that a few years ago. Now, we're governed by people that think an open border is quite acceptable. So, yeah, I'm quite proud to describe ourselves as old-fashioned because I think it chimes with most people's views.
Could you imagine? I'm thinking about if you could jump into a time machine and go back into the early 80s, whenever the SDP was originally conceived and formed, and they put their heads together in some room somewhere and said, right, what are our policies? And someone said, well, we need to make it clear that a woman is an adult human female and a man is an adult human male. Say, well, what? We have to put that into a manifesto. We have to make that clear to the electorate. Surely everybody knows that. Could you imagine going back in time and having to pitch that forward as a talking point to your electorate that you actually know what a woman is?
Yeah, it shows how far we've come down this sort of liberal road of absurdity. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I don't know. People, they don't know what to think, do they, about our politicians? And virtually all of the mainstream parties have the same problem. All of them are in the same boat on this stuff. They're all drunk the Kool-Aid on all this woke ideology. And there's very little to choose from. Actually, on the social side, they all have the same views, all spout the same things. I don't think there'd be very much, we just elected a Labour government with a landslide. I don't think there'll be very much difference, to be honest with you.
What a crazy time to be alive, but that's the position that we're in at the minute, and it does underscore that value, that importance of having old-fashioned values there, because I think that's what, by the end of this Labour run, that's what people are going to be screaming for. They're not going to be wanting it, they're going to be screaming for it, and maybe you guys are just best positioned to deliver on that as you continue to build on the foundations that you've just laid in this election. We've got to take a little headline break right now, William, for about 30 seconds. When we come back at the other side, I'm looking at a post that you put up here about first past the post, which is our current electoral system, of course. You described it as an abomination. Now, I want to get a little bit of an insight on what your thinking is in that. I know where you're going with it, but, when you look at some of these figures and you look at the turnout and the amount of votes, for example, even Reform got versus the Lib Dems and the seats that have been returned, it's obvious that something's broken there. But are the British electorate even aware of that? Let's talk about that when we come back at the other side here on TNT, Today's News Talk. Okay, William, this whole business about electoral reform, the need for electoral reform, you put a post up to say FPTP, first past the post system, is an abomination. Only the vaguest relation between seats and votes, and then you put up a graphic here, and I'm just going to try and paraphrase it. So the projections were that Labour would have a vote share of approximately 34%, which would return back 65 seats. For example, if Conservative had a 24%, they would return 18, Reform 14%. They've returned back 4 seats, I think it is, and this is expanded on further by a political commentator this morning to say Reform got 4 million votes and got 4 seats. The Liberal Democrats got 3.5 million votes, but 71 seats. So think about that just for a minute. How can that even be possible?
Well, it is possible under our system. There's a sort of elegance to the system in that we have 650 seats and the public decides which MP to elect, right? So it has a simplicity to it, but you get these grotesque results, and this is one. I mean, it's happened in history before. In 1983, the SDP alliance got something like 25.5% of the vote and got 23 seats. Labour got 27% and got 210. So it's happening regularly. UKIP, same thing. They got 4 million votes in 2015, got 1 seat. And that's a very expensive seat, Rick. So I think it is an absurdity. And the other thing about this election that we've just had is that the Labour vote has progressively gone down. It's decreased from 2017 to 2019, and now it's decreased, and they end up with a landslide. But it's a loveless landslide. If you look at Labour's support, it's a mile wide and an inch deep. So I think we've got to have electoral reform. I can see some people that like the first past the post system say it has a catharsis or, it gets solid results. Well, maybe I mean, it hasn't actually done that recently anyway. I mean, it didn't do that in 2015, 2010, so it doesn't really deliver what it is, but it doesn't end up, seats do not match votes at all. And you end up with a parliament, therefore, that doesn't look like the views in the country, and I think it should.
This whole business, the analysis here, I've give you the figures: Reform 4 million votes, 4 seats; Lib Dems, for example, 3.5 million votes, 71 seats. So the question is, well, how can this happen? So the analysis was, well, Reform used like a blunderbuss, a scattergun approach here to this election, whereas the Lib Dem approach to more like a sniper rifle. Will lessons be learned as a result of this result going forward into the next set of elections? Election pacts maybe, or how would you say, plans standing in certain areas instead of diluting the focus from other places?
I think it's more. I don't buy the focus thing. I think I think it's largely to do with the electoral dynamics of where your votes are. What Reform have done is come second all over the place. You don't get a seat for coming second, right? So that's what happened to them. And on electoral pacts, we had an electoral pact with Reform at this election. In 10 seats, they didn't stand against us. It was only a minimal pact. We agreed with them 2 years ago, but they stuck to it. We stuck to it, and it didn't yield them a seat. That particular thing. So I think the problem is it's just where your votes are, almost by luck. I mean, the Liberals will always get some votes in the Celtic fringe. In Orkney and Shetland, which is a place I know a little bit about, solidly Liberal seat, will always be a Liberal seat. And in the West Country, you've got liberalism that's quite strong. And they're lucky to have those concentrations. But if you're unlucky and your support is spread throughout the country, everywhere, thinly, you don't win seats. And that's the issue. And I don't see why people should be penalised just because of the luck of where your votes happen to mount up. So I really think we need a change. I think, I saw a poll the other day, Rick, that said a majority of British people want a change, and let's put that on the agenda. It can't go on like this. It's absurd.
Yeah, it is. Just as we wrap this one up, because, in life, does the perfect employer exist? Does the perfect church exist? Does the perfect school exist? Does the perfect political party exist? I say no. So a lot of people listening into us this morning, obviously talking maybe for the first time listening to you, and let me tell you this, our listeners, our live chatters can be a hard audience. They don't mess around, and they don't take any prisoners, and they jump on everything that's being said. And that's a good thing, because they've got critical thinking brains. So someone's jumped on your website as we're talking here, and the point was raised that the SDP accept the broad scientific consensus that fossil fuels are contributing to climate change. And obviously that's an absolute red flag for very, very many people. And, any inference of greenness is a warning sign. And I totally understand that one as well. Is it a case of that's a main priority for you guys, or is it in the general pecking order of things? Does it sit further down? Because you're never going to find a manifesto where you look at it and you say, yes, I agree with 100% of what's in there. So I'm throwing that question at you, because sometimes it's been, the accusations been leveled, you give people an easy time when you get them on the show. I'm just asking you the question, in the scheme of things, where does that sit with the SDP?
Well, first, I agree with you that only a bigot agrees with everything a political party believes in. And George Orwell said that, and he happens to be right. On this, we actually take a much more pragmatic view than most parties. We're not in favour of unrealistic net zero targets. We're against unnecessary deindustrialisation in the West. I think it's cost us a lot. And we are realistic about where the real... if you accept the scientific consensus as it is on carbon in the atmosphere being a contributor to global warming, if you accept that, then it's China and India and other economies that are concerned with this. So we've never been in favour of slamming our own economy. I think the people that prioritise it are mistaken. I think it's a displacement activity, frankly. What we are keen on is nuclear energy. That's what we prioritise. That's what you want to do to get your base load. And I've spoken out in favour, actually, of expanding Rosebank, the drilling in Shetland, And as a party, we also support the proposed coal mine in Whitehaven. So we're actually quite pragmatic on this stuff. So I think we take a reasonable line.
That's it. That's good. I'm glad that this was brought up in our live chat, and I'm glad that I brought it up to you too, because that's the whole purpose of dialogue. And not everybody. I mean, not everybody, believe it or not, agrees with me. A lot of people think I talk complete bunkum, and I'm talking out of my ass half the time. But they still tune in and listen, thankfully. And it's the same with our guests. I love the fact that I can sit in front of you and, we didn't agree what we were going to talk about before we came on there. I didn't know what people were going to write in the live chat. But is this not what dialogue is all about? Is this not what politics should all be about? You should be able to give an answer to people and, stand by it without feeling ashamed to say, we're pragmatic about this. We're not dogmatic about it.
Totally agree. And I think a thing that you'll hear from me that you won't hear from many politicians is, and I love debate, and free debate is absolutely vital in our society. It's being chilled. And I always say to people, take a look at the policies, and if you agree with them, vote for us. And if you don't vote for someone else.
Yep, and that's as far as you could say. I say that to people listening to me as well. I say, if you don't like me, turn off and go and listen to somebody that you do like. Otherwise, you're crazy sitting enduring me for 2 hours in the morning when you could be going out doing something that you actually enjoy. So yes, I agree with that approach 100%. Listen, we're up to time in this one now. William, it's been an absolute blast talking to you. Hopefully, it'll not be the last time we talk. This could be the first of many conversations going forward. And whatever you're off to do now today, I hope you have a great weekend. And congratulations on the foundations that you guys are laying in British politics at the minute. That's William Clouston, from the Social Democratic Party. Check them out, sdp.org.uk.